The open road had always called to me, and I finally answered by embarking on a van life adventure. My trusty van was my home, my sanctuary, and my ticket to explore the unknown. But one particular night would shatter my sense of security and leave me questioning the very essence of the freedom I sought. I had been driving for hours, the sun setting behind me as I navigated a winding road through a dense forest. With the van's headlights cutting through the darkness, I finally found a spot to park for the night, a clearing surrounded by towering trees. The silence was enveloping, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl. I cooked a simple dinner and settled into my bed, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. The van's interior was cozy, lit by a soft glow from the overhead lights. I was just drifting off when I heard it, a faint whisper, so quiet that I thought it might be my imagination. But then it came again, clearer this time, like the wind was carrying distant voices. I sat up, my heart racing, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. And then I saw them, figures, shadows moving outside my windows. My breath caught in my throat as I watched them circling my van, their movements slow and deliberate. I reached for my phone, ready to dial for help, but there was no signal. I was alone, surrounded by these eerie figures. A knock on the van's door made me jump, and I turned to see a face pressed against the window, pale, distorted, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. "Let us in," a voice whispered, a chorus of voices echoing the same phrase. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or respond. The figures pressed closer, their whispers growing louder, more urgent. Panic surged through me, and I started the van, my tires screeching as I tore out of the clearing and onto the road. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but the figures were gone, swallowed by the darkness. I drove for hours, my heart still pounding, until I reached a small town. Exhausted and shaken, I found a safe place to park for the night, far from the forest. But sleep eluded me, haunted by the memory of those faces and voices. Since that night, I've continued my van life journey, but the sense of security I once had is forever shattered. The open road still calls to me, but now I'm acutely aware that there are places where the silence holds secrets, and the darkness conceals things better left undiscovered. The allure of van life had always been a dream of mine, the freedom to roam wherever the road would take me. I packed my essentials, said my goodbyes, and hit the open road in my cozy little camper van. But little did I know, this journey would lead me to a night of pure terror that would forever change my perspective. I had been driving through the desert for hours, the landscape stretching out before me in all its barren beauty. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, I spotted a remote area to set up camp for the night. It was a picturesque spot, the stars starting to twinkle above. I cooked a simple dinner, settled into my makeshift bed, and felt the exhaustion of the day finally catch up with me. It was the middle of the night when I was abruptly awakened by the sound of footsteps outside my van. My heart pounded as I listened, convinced that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then the footsteps came again, slow, deliberate, circling my van. I strained my ears, trying to tell myself it was an animal, a harmless creature passing by. But then a voice echoed through the silence, a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "We know you're in there," it hissed, the words seeming to come from all directions. My blood turned to ice as I huddled in the darkness, my mind racing to make sense of what was happening. The van suddenly rocked as if something had bumped into it. I stifled a scream, my breath coming in shallow gasps. More whispers followed, a cacophony of voices that I couldn't decipher. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed 911. But there was no signal, no lifeline to the outside world. The footsteps continued, the voices growing more urgent, more insistent. And then came the sound of scratching, nails against metal, like someone, or something, was trying to get inside. I huddled in the back of the van, my heart pounding in my chest, the darkness outside my only shield. Hours passed, the terror feeling like an eternity. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the footsteps and voices receded, swallowed by the night. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by my ragged breaths. With the first light of dawn, I gathered my courage and peeked outside. There was no sign of anyone or anything, no evidence of the night's horrors. I started the van and drove away, leaving that desolate spot behind me. Since that night, my van life dream has turned into a nightmare. I'm haunted by the memory of those voices, the footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere. The open road that once represented freedom now feels like a path fraught with unknown dangers. And as I drive on, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that something lurks just beyond the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Embarking on a van life adventure was a dream come true for me. The idea of waking up to breathtaking landscapes, exploring remote places, and living life on my own terms was intoxicating. With my van converted into a cozy living space, I set off on my journey, ready to embrace the freedom of the open road. Little did I know, this trip would take me to a place of terror and uncertainty that I could never have imagined. One evening, after a long day of driving, I found myself in a secluded area nestled between towering trees. The sun was setting, casting an amber glow across the landscape. It seemed like the perfect spot to spend the night, so I parked my van and settled in. The tranquility of the woods was a welcome change from the hustle and bustle of city life. As darkness fell, I curled up in my sleeping bag, the gentle sounds of nature lulling me into a peaceful slumber. But sometime in the middle of the night, I was abruptly awakened by a strange sensation, a feeling of being watched. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding as I scanned the dimly lit interior of the van. I dismissed the feeling as a product of my imagination and attempted to go back to sleep. But then I heard it, a soft, whispering voice, barely audible but unmistakably present. I sat up, my senses on high alert, and strained to listen. The voice seemed to be coming from outside, just beyond the walls of the van. Fear tightened its grip on me as I realized that the voice was not alone. It was joined by others, a chorus of hushed tones that seemed to be conversing in a language I couldn't understand. Panic surged through me as I considered the possibility that there were people lurking outside my van, in the darkness of the woods. With my heart racing, I reached for a small flashlight and shined it towards the windows. What I saw sent a chill down my spine, shadowy figures, silhouetted against the trees, their eyes reflecting the dim light like predatory animals. My blood turned to ice as I realized that I was not alone in this remote wilderness. I watched in terror as the figures moved closer, their movements deliberate and calculated. They seemed to be circling my van, their whispers growing louder and more urgent. I felt like a trapped animal, vulnerable and exposed. The thought of stepping outside to confront them was unthinkable. The woods had become a realm of unknown dangers. As the figures closed in, their whispered voices grew into a cacophony, a dissonant symphony of incomprehensible words. I clutched the flashlight, my knuckles turning white, desperately searching for a way out. In that moment, a primal instinct took over, fight or flight. With trembling hands, I started the van and sped away from that nightmarish scene. As the distance between me and the figures grew, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something forbidden, something that lurked at the fringes of human understanding. The encounter left me shaken to my core, the memory of those figures and their eerie voices forever etched into my mind. The allure of van life had turned into a haunting reminder that even in the beauty of nature, there are forces that defy explanation and fill the heart with dread.